Hello and welcome to Indian Standard Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan. And in a week that has seen the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, travel across Central Asia and to Russia to the BRICS summit at Ufa, where the subject of Afghanistan loomed large in all his deliberations, we will discuss the situation in that vital neighbor of India and South Asia, part of South Asia, Afghanistan, with Mariam Safi, who is the founding director of the Organization for Policy Research and Development Studies in Kabul. Welcome to the show, Mariam.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself to start with. You have been living in Kabul for the last 5 or 6 years. Tell us a little bit about the nature of the organization that you work for.
I moved back to Toronto. I moved back to Kabul in 2010. And before that, I lived in Canada, and I was a part of the diaspora there. And I was involved in the analytical research community. And upon my return to Kabul, I joined this nascent community. And so I just wanted to say that today, as I discuss the various issues with relation to Afghanistan, I hope to bring out some of those views that I've gathered through my research in Afghanistan, rather than speaking on behalf of a nation. Right. Or of a people.
No, I think our viewers would appreciate that, because a lot of what we tend to hear about Afghanistan is either the point of view of leaders of the country, who obviously feel they have a mandate to speak on behalf of the country, or of individuals who have very definite points of view, or of Indian analysts. So I think what you present for us here today is valuable, quite frankly. And let me start by getting a sense of your basic assessment of the security situation. You live in Kabul. We know that the situation has deteriorated slightly in the last 6 to 8 months. We read reports of more brazen attacks, terrorist attacks, bomb blasts, including attacks in Kabul. How is what's your sense of the security situation today in Afghanistan and in particular in the capital?
Well, the security situation in Afghanistan has deteriorated, and analysts are predicting that this is probably going to be the deadliest or bloodiest year since the international intervention began in 2001. Okay. So far, from January till now, we've had over 5,300 security incidents. We have had...
and this is part of the ASB offensive of the Taliban?
Even before ASB began. Okay. Even before ASB began. Even in the winter time, when normally that's a period where the Taliban tend to retreat. This year, in the later part of 2014, we faced quite a significant sharp rise in security incidents. We had an attack in Kabul, in the green zone, almost once a week at that point in time, almost once a day, actually. So it was quite, the threats were quite significant. And now we're realizing that in addition to the security incidents, civilian casualties are also rising, almost 8% compared to last year this time. So all in all, the threat perception amongst Afghans are increasing.
Is there a pattern in the nature of incidents that the Taliban is provoking? I mean, are they going after civilian targets? Are they going after government targets? Are they targeting government officials? What's the pattern?
Yes, actually, one of the reasons why that threat perception in Afghanistan has increased is because of the different tactics that the Taliban are employing. When ASM began, this is the first time that the insurgency has launched their spring offensive, void of the international troop presence in the country. And the main targets of their attacks are Afghan civilians for the first time. And so this has contributed greatly to the threat perception. Also, this was the first time that the Taliban launched a spring offensive in the north. And so currently in Afghanistan, you don't have only insecurity pocketed in a certain particular area, but it's in the east, the north, the south, in central Afghanistan. So this is starting to get people very worried. And most of the Taliban are only kilometers away from city centers. At the present moment, as Minister of Interior mentioned, that almost half of the provinces, of the 34 provinces in Afghanistan, are under security threat. And so this is contributing greatly to the threat perception. But I must add that in relation to, let's say, 2012, security incidents have actually declined. So we're seeing security incidents decline, but threat perceptions increase. because in addition to the security problems in Afghanistan, you also have quite significant governance issues as well.
Right.
And this is adding to people's fears.
And in terms of the logic of what the Taliban are trying to do, I know that in the past they tried to capitalize on resentment among ordinary Afghans to civilian casualties caused by coalition forces in many of their incidents. This was a factor which, in a way, the Taliban took advantage of. What's the logic behind them targeting Afghan civilians now? Is it just to spread terror and to overawe the state, overawe the people?
In their statement, they launch a statement every time they launch their spring offensive. And in their statement, they mentioned that Azm itself means perseverance, means determination.
Okay.
So they've mentioned that the current state of Afghan politics, dictated by the bilateral security agreement signed with the United States, the Taliban, in their perception, feel that the government of Afghanistan is still a puppet regime. It's still being dictated by outside forces. There's still a level of true presence in Afghanistan. So though we thought that perhaps the propaganda value of the Taliban insurgency might decline, in fact, we're seeing a complete opposite. We are seeing the Taliban more determined than ever before. And there are various factors leading them to this. For the moment, the Taliban see a very weak central government. So they want to make as many territorial gains, many security gains as possible. So they have enough leverage that when they're sitting on the negotiation table talking to the government, they will be in the position of strength. And quite frankly, they are in the position of strength as we see it. In addition to this, the Taliban find that IS, or ISIL, Daesh, faces quite a significant threat, that the Taliban as well. And the Taliban is becoming...
So I think the Taliban feels vulnerable to Daesh.
Yes, because for the first time, Daesh is presenting a viable alternative for those members of the insurgency who do not want to talk with the Afghan government. And now that venue, that opportunity has opened for them. And so the Taliban are...
And would you say that's a significant section of the Taliban?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not at the moment. It's not a significant section at the moment, but if this trend continues, then it could be.
Now, as part of the Organization for Policy Research and Development Studies, have you conducted studies or have your researchers been able to gauge the sense of how the public looks at the government of Afghanistan? In other words, what's the credibility that the Kabul government, that the Ashraf Ghani government enjoys in the eyes of the people of Afghanistan?
Our organization, DROPS, actually just concluded a survey that was conducted. And the survey was conducted both with the public and also government officials and the public sector. And we found out through this survey that the main contention amongst the Afghan people is that they perceive the Afghan government, the national unity government, to lack an essential element, which is unity. It's a very divided government.
So it's a splintered nature of authority that is undermining Kabul, as it were, rather than the view that it's a puppet government.
Absolutely. This government, and there's been many instances where we've seen this. For example, we don't have a full cabinet as of right now. We don't have a minister of defense right now. We have 4 provincial governors only at the moment. And many of the attributes to this is because the government is very divided. They cannot agree on certain principles and certain nominations.
Right.
And this is creating a lot of contention. And the people think that, and the people doubt the Afghan government's ability actually to be able to even approach the peace process when they don't even have a unified strategy.
So would it be fair to say that the arrangement between Ashraf Ghani and Dr. Abdullah is not working very well? We know that there is a power sharing understanding, there is some kind of division of labor. But is that becoming a problem?
It is becoming a problem because the power sharing arrangement that was agreed by them, we're seeing that fragment. We're seeing an Afghan government where the cabinet is almost split right through the middle.
Right.
And this is, as I said, is proving quite problematic in making serious policy decisions. President Ashraf Ghani is basically doing his thing, and Abdullah is doing his. And the lack of communication and coordination amongst them becomes quite visible in certain instances.
And can you give us an example of dysfunctionality of that kind where the two sides pull and cross purposes?
Absolutely. For example, one of the main policies or one of the main principles of this national unity government was reform. And a key element of this agenda was reforming the elections, the electoral process in Afghanistan. Till date, we don't have a head for the electoral commission to reform.
They're not able to agree on that.
They can't. They're not able to agree,
Right.
and as a consequence, we have parliamentary elections which are now delayed,
Right.
with no identification of a date where it will proceed.
And tell me about the ANSF, the Afghan National Security Forces, their capabilities of dealing with the security challenge of the Taliban when coalition forces are no longer present, as they are often now not. How do you rate the ANSF's performance and their abilities?
So far, I would say that the ANSF is able to prevent the insurgency from making territorial gains. The insurgency may launch an attack, may hold a certain area for a few days, but in the long run, they are not able to continue the fight against the ANSF.
Right.
And the public are quite happy and satisfied with the performance of the ANSF.
Okay.
However, if we're going to look at the capabilities, three factors that can make an army strong includes local leadership and governance. It includes outside training and long-term partnerships to produce effective results, in resources to continue a conflict until you win the war.
Right.
And if you look at the ANSF within the framework of these three areas, it brings a very mixed picture.
Right. Okay, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we will talk about the diplomatic factor, the Afghan relationship with Pakistan, India, Iran, and its other neighbors. Keep watching. Welcome back to IST. I'm talking to Mariam Safi of the Organization for Policy Research and Development Studies. And Mariam, before we took our break, we had discussed the security situation and the role of the security forces. I wanted to turn now to the issue of peace talks, the dialogue process between the Taliban and the Afghan government. We know that there have been perhaps 3 or 4 rounds. They've met in various places. There was a report last month of a meeting in Urumqi. What's your assessment as an analyst of where that process is going? Are the Taliban serious? Is the Kabul government serious?
I think that the Afghan government is quite serious. Under President Ashraf Ghani's leadership, the peace process has gained a lot of momentum.
Okay.
And as a result of that momentum, you've seen several initiatives take form. First, President Ghani did something that was well appreciated. He met with civil society members in Afghanistan. He met with women's groups. He met with tribal elders. He met with a wide area of stakeholders.
So going beyond the High Peace Council, in a sense. Yeah.
Yes, and meeting with them, gathering their views on how we should continue or pursue this process. And then the second step that he initiated was bringing China and bringing Pakistan into this process and trying to harbor a genuine effort on both of their parts, particularly Pakistan. And hence his first visit was to China. His second, or I should say his third visit was to Pakistan. And these were really key initiatives. And lastly, Ashraf Ghani has, with the help of the High Peace Council and others, they've been able to garner the support of the international community and then hold several events that were held in Qatar. Then you had Oslo, then you had Dubai, and then the most recent meeting that took place in Islamabad just last Tuesday. And this event on Tuesday was the first time that the Afghan government officially met and held direct talks with the Taliban. And this is a milestone. It's perhaps the greatest achievement of the peace process since it was initiated in 2010 at the London conference by President Hamid Karzai.
But the ground offensive continues, the security situation continues to deteriorate.
Yes.
So how do we make sense of this contradiction that on the one hand, violence is at a high and on the other, the peace process appears to be getting off the ground.
Yes, there is a general feeling in Afghanistan that the Taliban are using a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, they continue to fight in the battlefield to gain security gains, to increase their leverages, as I mentioned, to speak from that position of strength. And on the other hand, they are also talking to almost anyone who's willing to listen to them. I mean, it has shown unprecedented access to the Taliban in these last 2-3 months.
Right.
And so they're using both approaches, and many people feel that they're using these approaches because the insurgency itself is becoming a bit war weary. The insurgency, particularly the leadership under Mullah Omar, is willing to use its position at the current level and to try to see if they can reach that political settlement. That we see happening.
Right.
And I believe that there is a segment within the Taliban who is willing to sit on the negotiation table. As I mentioned earlier, there is also a significant group within the insurgency, as they have become highly fragmented, that don't want to sit and talk. And they're willing to continue this fight.
Even if this means going in the direction of Daesh or the Islamic State.
Some of them, absolutely.
Right.
But the general sentiment in Afghanistan, the positive feeling is that the Taliban have changed some of their ways. If we look at their approach to women's issues, they've mentioned numerous times in statements that we see a softening of position with regards to women's rights. And in terms of regional cooperation, in terms of international cooperation, we see a change, a shift in those areas. We see a lot of diplomacy. At least that is what the delegates of these 2, 3, 4 forums that have been held have come back to Afghanistan, and this is what they're saying, that they generally see. So we feel that the Taliban, the insurgency, is not necessarily looking to regain that once lost power, but to become a part of this political framework.
Even if it means accepting the realities of the Afghan constitution the way it is today?
One of the issues that was discussed last Tuesday was that the constitution could change. Particularly, I heard chapters 1 and 2. And there is that sentiment. Now, Ashraf Ghani has consistently mentioned, and so had Karzai, that within this change, human rights and women's rights
are non-negotiable,
and we will protect them. I believe that is true. However, as we have seen in Afghanistan since 2001, security is prioritized, stability is prioritized above development, above human security, above social justice and human rights.
Is there a danger that women's rights may be compromised at the altar of an elusive peace with the Taliban?
Absolutely. There definitely is that threat.
There is a pressure on that front.
There is that threat. And there has so far been no concrete guarantees that we won't see a rollback of the gains that women have made. There's been a lot of talk. But in Afghanistan, a lot of issues are rhetorics, and we need to see some action on the ground. If we want to ensure that women's rights are protected, then maybe we should have seen a woman as a part of that delegation that went to Islamabad.
Right.
When it comes to talking directly with the Taliban, women are outside of that process. They're not on that negotiation table.
And this is obviously a deliberate strategy by the government, perhaps to not alienate or to pander to or to appease the Taliban.
Yes.
I think that doesn't augur well. But let me switch to the question of Pakistan-Afghanistan relations. I know that when Ashraf Ghani was elected, there was a great deal of hope in Pakistan that finally the Afghans have a leader who will be more sympathetic to and more responsive to Pakistan's concerns. And certainly Ashraf Ghani, by going to Rawalpindi and the headquarters of the Pakistani army, appeared to be willing to go an extra mile. Since then, however, relations haven't exactly been as smooth as Rawalpindi might have hoped. Some of the old accusations that Kabul levels against Pakistan have resurfaced. So what is your sense? I mean, does the Afghan government and does President Ghani see Pakistan as helpful or a hindrance as far as the security situation is concerned, or perhaps both?
I find that it's difficult to say either or. I think that the efforts that President Ghani has taken with Pakistan were the right steps to take. President Ghani has said that this undeclared war between Afghanistan and Pakistan has kept the Taliban locked in a conflict in the country.
Right.
And if we want to bring the Taliban to the table, if we want peace and stability in the country, then we need to sort out our difficulties with Pakistan. And with that regards, I think that the efforts he has taken, and he's taken huge efforts, and he's received a considerable amount of criticism in Afghanistan for these steps. But these steps have ensured a flow of communication and coordination that we hadn't seen before. Army Chief of Staff has visited numerous times. ISI Chief has visited numerous times. Army Chief had mentioned that, as you might recall, that the statement that we will see all terrorists as alike.
Right.
And Rizwan,
After the Army Public School
that's
attack,
right.
yeah.
And Rizwan Akhtar also mentioned that that the enemies of Afghanistan are the enemies of Pakistan. And he also visited President Ghani and presented the 20-point national plan to him and mentioned to him that, you know, we're going after the insurgents, the Afghan Taliban that are on our side, and we're telling them that we're no longer going to be able to allow your functions on the side of the border, and you need to join this peace process.
Right.
And they're doing these efforts. Now, having said that, there is always that level of distrust. And I think that at the same time, while we're seeing some steps taken by the Pakistani government, at the same time, you have statements come out of Pakistan saying things like, we cannot be expected to bring the entire Taliban group to the negotiation table. And make them sit and sign the dotted lines. We don't have that much influence over them. Now, some people in Afghanistan would interpret that as actually, in fact, Pakistan having a two-pronged approach in Afghanistan. Let's support them in the battlefield, while on the other hand, we'll bring certain members, their influence within the larger Taliban or within Qatar office being questionable, to the negotiation table and see which one moves forward. And there's a few people who have that view. And also, there's also this issue, as I mentioned, of Daesh's presence in Afghanistan when Pakistan launched their offensive in the tribal border belt last summer. At that point, while they were targeting those Taliban, the bad Taliban, as they may call it, that are a threat to the Pakistani state, 500-600 families, including a lot of foreign jihadists, seeped right into Afghanistan, along with their families, setting up bases in northern Afghanistan. And now that's destabilizing northern areas. Right. And so why wasn't anything done? Were they deliberately allowed to cross? So there are those issues.
As an Afghan analyst, how do you respond to the Pakistani allegation that the Kabul government is helping the TTP and other anti-Pakistani extremist groups? There is this allegation that they make that the so-called, what they consider bad Taliban, has a safe haven inside your country.
I think that there's the blame game that goes on between both of these countries. It falls within that area. And I think that when trying to reflect the issue onto another country to take away from the activities that Pakistan is doing, I think that it falls within that area. And I think that this blame game, I think that perhaps if Ashraf Ghani continues to pursue its genuine efforts, and it's been very much genuine with the Pakistani government, I think we may start seeing this decrease. And the event that we saw in Islamabad, the negotiations with the Afghan government officials, is one sign of Pakistan perhaps showing its honesty.
Showing a positive step
in this approach.
We are almost out of time, but I wanted to ask you and end on this note, that as an Afghan analyst, what would your advice to India be at this difficult time when, or this sort of changing time when foreign forces are leaving the country and the security situation is getting complicated? What should India be doing? The
Afghans have quite a love and respect for India, and this was reflected through President Hamid Karzai, through several visits, and it's been reflected also through Ashraf Ghani and the several memorandums we have signed and the cooperation we have, and India being the largest aid donor in the region to Afghanistan. For those reasons, Indians have a very soft spot in the hearts of Afghans. I think that we also understand the threat that perhaps India might be sensing with the withdrawal of NATO forces and the closeness between the Pakistani and Afghan government. My advice to India would be that the relationship that Afghanistan has built with India, looking at the Afghan government, I think that it has all intentions to maintain that relationship. And I know that that relationship is also being maintained at the civil society level as well. And I think that the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan is essential for there to be peace in Afghanistan. And if there's peace in Afghanistan, then there's peace in the region. And hence the threat perception that India has would decline. So I would like them to keep an open mind in this regard.
On that constructive note, Mariam Safi, we'll have to end it there. Thank you very much for being with us on Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you for having me.
That's it for this episode of Indian Standard Time. Do join us again next week for another guest, another show. Thank you very much.